Welcome to episode 10. We are switching streams and we're going to take a little while, a few episodes, to examine gender ideology. Now, before we begin, I'm going to define a very important word, and then we are going to have to use that word to evaluate everything that we talk about. And the word is actually propaganda. It is the providing of one-sided, partial information, omitting facts and altering data in order to incite a desired emotional response. Now, in order to think critically, we must have knowledge, or else we'll not be able to come to an informed opinion on anything. We'll come to opinions and we will dig in deep on them, but whether or not they're informed depends totally on how much information we have. So, again, I'm going to start with deepening the discussion. This is the guide intended for school division staff to develop a deeper understanding of gender and sexual diversity, yada, yada. And on page 22, under item 4, family and community engagement, we have a little bit of a conundrum, because even though it's called deepening the discussion, no one is allowed to discuss. They're not allowed to question anything. And the road answer when it comes to gender identity is always, but suicide. And when we look at this page, it talks about having input, and it's the student and community council, and it should be involved in the development, implementation, and evaluation of school policies related to the safety and well-being of all students. Now, in Lumsden, there were parents on the student and community council. So they were deeply involved in this. Their job, according to deepening the discussion, is to evaluate the school policies and to see if they're appropriate and affecting the safety and well-being of all the students. And so when it comes to having input, they decided to function according to this, and they asked questions about policies. So they were aware of the curriculum, the details of the curriculum, everything that's going on in the school. These were the parents who were deeply involved, and they started to ask questions. How exactly did this get here? At what age or grade does it actually begin? Who oversees the limits of it? Who decides what's age appropriate? How is it carried out in the classroom? How is it controlled? And the response were blatant lies. They knew their lies because they're deeply involved. And the principal's response was, but suicide. And this is the universal mantra. Anytime we try to have a discussion or ask any questions about gender ideology. And the interesting thing is you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why? Like it comes out, and it constantly comes out. And it's because it's a manipulative, controlling, condemning, divisive word. And it's been weaponized to shut down conversations. You don't care. You're a bad person. You are mean. How dare you? These people might commit suicide. It's a guilt-assigning, fear-releasing attack, and it's articulated with, would you rather have a dead son or a live daughter? This is what comes out of the medical community. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a live son? So it's a fortress of emotional blackmail, and it's designed to prevent closer examination of the fault lines of this ideology. And I have identified 24 different facets or aspects of trans ideology, and suicide in no way addresses the questions that arise, and it is not the answer, or does it provide an answer to any of these questions, and you deserve answers. Questions require answers if we're going to have critical thought, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I put together a list of questions today. Where did the term gender originate, and what exactly is it? Is there scientific data to validate it? Why are kindergarten students in Canada being asked if they are a boy or a girl? What are the real suicide statistics? Don't all victims of suicide matter, or only those that are struggling with it that have gender issues? Is suicide a big deal? Now that might have sounded a little bit snarky, but let's look at what's going on in the nation. Yes, we have Bell's Suicide and Depression Awareness. There's a whole month set apart for this, but we also have in Canada Bill C-14. That's made medical assistance in dying, and the Liberal government is attempting to amend it to include mature minors, 12 years old and up. There's no requirement to contact the parents if they happen to run into a medical professional who feels that they've met the requirements. Then they can just go straight in. They can be assisted in dying, and when they don't come home from school and the parents go looking for them, they find out that they have passed away. Now, mature minor is another construct. It's defined as being sufficiently mature to understand information relative to a treatment decision and to appreciate the reasonably foreseeable consequences of a decision or a lack of decision. 12 years old. You just take that and chew on it for a little bit. Each province, by the way, is addressing this differently because healthcare is provincial. Now, the national government, that's a national law. Bill C-14 is a national government law. And the overlap is interesting. We have to look at this because as anything pertaining to gender is provided under healthcare, which is provincial, and education is provincial. So eerily, and I might say evilly, although I don't know if evilly is a word, this is similar to the pandemic, Bill C-4, where any treatment other than the one allowed by the government results in doctors losing their license. So the government of Canada, the national government, has closed off all other very successful treatment options for gender dysphoria. And they're only allowing chemical castration and surgical sterilization. Anyone attempting to treat gender dysphoria through counseling and addressing the issues that cause it will lose their license. So we're talking about puberty blockers and sex assignment surgery. So much for freedom and bodily autonomy. It doesn't exist in this area, not in Canada. So why is everything, this is another question, why is it funneled into one and only one end? Could we actually listen to a detransitioner, someone who's been through, experienced it all, and now would like to address their experiences and let you know the other side of the story? What's going on internationally? Does it matter? Well, Canada's good medically at some things, but we are by no means the cutting edge. And we need to look at what's happened in other nations, what they're doing and why, and what changes have come. Can we actually look at the whole picture without hysteria? Can we employ logic rather than making this area exempt from logic? What would happen? This is the logical question. What would happen if we treated other dysphorias according to the same criteria that we're now treating gender issues? Can we differentiate, and we had better, between gender dysphoria and gender identity and expression? Because confusion is an aspect of the illness, while expression is a choice. Can we clarify that behavior is not identity? And I would refer you to the Bud Light guy. And women, it's really hard for us not to be offended that we are quantified by this, by makeup, by clothes, that our intelligence is flitting around a field saying we're female. Oh, I'm so happy to be a girl. Are teachers practicing psychotherapy without a license by integrating SOGI curriculum into the classroom? That's a good question. Are the school counselors? I'm not demeaning their education, but they are not qualified medically. What is false compassion, and how does it hurt rather than help? What happens if we don't do anything? Now, the answer would be screamed at you, suicide, suicide, suicide. But we're going to take a look at what actually happens when nothing happens. And on the subject of compassion, what are the side effects of puberty blockers? Are there negative outcomes from gender reassignment surgery? Because you certainly don't hear about them in mainstream media. Are women dealing with detrimental outcomes, and are women being victimized? Where's your compassion? Are women being victimized as a result of this? So, asking questions is a legitimate form of discourse. It's not attacking, and it's not hate. So, here's another one. Can we agree that if a subjective ideology cannot be academically defended, then it should be excluded from being misrepresented in curriculum as truth? If you want to say people think like this, people struggle this, people make this choice, but calling it truth when it's subjective, well, it just doesn't fly now, does it? So in that review, or in that vein, what are peer review studies? I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about this because you're going to be able to use that question, hopefully, if you're having conversations with people. If you're looking to Google for statistics and information, you might want to assess the validity of the information on there. So this is a quote from the National Institute of Health on peer review. There is little evidence on its effectiveness, but there is considerable evidence on its defects. It's not reliable. It's based on trust. They never spot all the errors. So what this sentence is referring to is they actually inserted errors all the way through articles and papers and just left them in there and waited for the peers to review them. They were never all spotted. Some reviewers did not spot any, and most only about a quarter. Now, that is pretty shaky ground to be standing on when the outcome is non-reversible and physically damage, permanently sterilizing. It is a fantasy, I continue, that peer reviews are highly objective, reliable, or consistent. Fantasy. Most importantly, the peer review process has been strongly biased against negative studies. In other words, studies that find an intervention does not work. They don't even bother writing them up because it biases the information of base of medicine. Now, what that means is if we stop the treatment, if there's no treatment, then there's no cash cow. And gender is a billion-dollar industry. And yeah, there are a lot of people that have no qualms about making millions of dollars off of sterilizing children. So it continues, reviewing raw data is difficult, expensive, and time-consuming. And since they're focused on a desired outcome, why bother? So the peer review process, which is intended to boost the rigor and objectivity of scientific work, is itself not done in an objective, systematic, or scientific way. In fact, it is one of the most scattershot, inconsistent messes possible. This is the National Institute of Health, a direct quote. This is not me. It selects and assigns reviewers, and the process is filled with room for bias and error. The processes are not standardized. The content of reviews is often arbitrary, and it's influenced by personal agenda. Well, so the next time someone starts to share their information with you on why they think gender ideology is a valid and a necessary thing, ask them if it came from a peer-reviewed study. Ask them if their data has been replicated. They won't even be able to quote where they got it from. They're just quoting. So, to end with a quote, Bell Canada, let's talk. looking forward to spending some more time with you. We are going to deep dive into a lot. I'm going to answer as many of these questions, and I have more as possible. In the meantime, begin to pay attention to what's going on. Ask your kids questions. And I'm going to put a little news article in the comments underneath this, something our Prime Minister is doing. I think it will interest you as parents and tax-paying Canadian citizens. We need to know, we need to be aware, and it's time to start speaking up. See you later.